Our town begins with a couple in a parked car in the woods at night, which is the "it was a dark and stormy night" for modern horror. Let's check up on the couple in question.
We don't have to be out here, you know. It's not like you're still in high school.
And as your community college dean, I want to assure you that this will count as college credit. She heads off so that they can get their freak on out in the woods, like civilized people. But as soon as she's gone, he starts having some kind of attack. Well, whatever's wrong, I'm sure trying to bone a barely legal teenage girl in the middle of the woods at night is probably not going to do the condition any favors. I've yet to see that as a listed treatment on WebMD. And believe me, I've looked. Well, she's calling for him to come over, real seductive-like, because we need to prove that this is science fiction, and that's the only place where she would give him the time of day. I may be in my 50s, little lady, but I've got the physical endurance of a much younger man. Yeah, a 5-year-old.
Why don't you set the blanket down and...
Not yet.
Why not?
Because you have to catch me first.
Oh, but my hip!
You don't want me to chase after you, do you?
Let me just drink my Ensure first. He goes stumbling into the woods after her until he finds himself in a circle of people with flashlights. Turns out this was all a trap, and here's a guy with a Wilson the volleyball mask on and a big-ass axe, who clearly uses it before we get to the truth is out there. When we come back, Mulder is telling Scully about this case. The guy's been missing for 10 weeks now, and it turns out that the dead guy is a federal poultry inspector. Scully is indignant because this is clearly something that could have been handled by an agent at the nearest branch office instead of sending them all the way down to Arkansas to likely keep them distracted. But Mulder is actually delighted with the case because there was a report of foxfire, and it matches the descriptions of events witnessed by a guy who was committed to an asylum after his experience with it.
You can't let them kill you. See, you can't let them kill you. Oh, no. No, don't let them kill you. Don't let them kill you.
Hey, don't go telling me what to do, pal. So they're off to Dudley, Arkansas, home to the fictitious Chaco chicken, probably a thinly veiled reference to Tyson chicken, which is also headquartered in Arkansas. While checking out the site, the local sheriff shows up, who's amiable enough but figures that George, the victim, left town and the scorch mark is just an illegal trash burning. The former part is backed up by the wife, who admits that her husband is a cheating son of a bitch who probably left town with some pretty girl. Though, in his defense, inspecting the thighs and breasts of chicks is technically part of his job description. But Mulder is more interested in the fact that George was about to file an inspection report with the USDA, asking the place to be shut down due to multiple health violations, which, just saying that makes me really glad I just had a cheeseburger. Considering how many people have to be employed at that plant, it seems far more likely that there's some foul play involved. Sorry, that honestly was not intended. So Mulder and Scully head there next to look into the place, where we discover the girl from the beginning of the episode works here. And she's got something wrong with her because she's got to take some medicine. Oh, that's no problem. Now, go handle people's food. But Mulder and Scully's first stop is the guy who runs the joint.
Was there any merit to his claims?
Let me show you something.
Okay, first, I want you to assume that a chicken is a perfect sphere of uniform density. Got that? Okay, now I want you to not panic when I show you such a chicken that we grew in our lab. While he's off to do that, though, the girl freaks out and sees George's severed head on one of the spikes in front of her, so she grabs it, throws it on the floor, and runs off. The camera then shows us that it was a chicken, for anyone who didn't realize that she was hallucinating. Even in a place with health violations, I really doubt human heads are showing up all that often. Speaking of which, it seems that George is the only one that had a problem with this place. Other inspectors come in and say that everything is fine, and he's the only one who's doing the complaining. He even sued the government over his job, said the conditions were making him sick, although that might be upon learning what happens with the chicken feed. Any part of a chicken that is not sold is ground up and mixed in with the feed to provide extra protein for the chickens that eat it. So now you know the secret ingredient. And wish it was still a secret. But the head of the place is soon taken hostage by that girl, who does clearly have a problem because her hair changes in between shots. Now, I wouldn't comment on this normally, but it's so obvious I honestly thought that this was a stunt double in a wig. Anyway, the sheriff finally shoots her, and to make this more grotesque, she falls down into the vat of ground-up chicken bits. It's like it's the ending of a PETA horror movie. While she's pulled out and hauled off, the guy in charge says there is no explanation for her behavior.
Come by tomorrow, let me take a look. Make sure it's not infected.
Buy a knife in a place filled with raw chicken? Nah, I don't see how that could happen. The physician here says that the girl did have headaches, similar to the symptoms that George had, but tests showed that there was nothing wrong. At the county hospital, I mean. I wouldn't really trust a brain scan done in a chicken plant, would you?
Medulla oblongata.
Scully would like to perform an autopsy just to be sure, but it has to be approved by Mr. Chaco himself, who was her grandfather and legal guardian, which means that either she's developmentally disabled, which doesn't seem likely, or George was trying to sleep with a girl that he had to know was under 18. Well, maybe it was Chris Hansen under that mask then. It would really explain everything, wouldn't it? Anyway, after the old bugger waxes on about chickens, building the factory, how much George sucked, how he had an onion tied to his belt because it was the style at the time, he finally gives the okay for the autopsy. And a good thing, too, because it reveals an explanation for her behavior.
She suffered from a rare degenerative disorder called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. It's characterized by the formation of sponge-like holes in the brain tissue.
That sounds bad. That sounds really incredibly bad. Even tumor would not make what you just said sound worse. You'd have to throw in dick melting before you could get even worse. Things get even weirder. Mulder pulls out the girl's personnel file and it says that she's 47 years old, which seems like really going overboard to try to buy a beer, I have to say. He plans to double-check that by looking at her birth certificate and to see whether or not she was born in Kenya, but on the way they're nearly hit by an out-of-control truck, leading to what is possibly the funniest crash in X-Files history. A tip for filmmakers: if you ever want to make people take your scene seriously, do not include chickens in it. And sadly, the X-Files failed to learn this lesson.